So there I was, standing on my front porch with my keys in my pocket, ready to leave my family forever. Um, Hi, my name's Kyle Jetzel, and I'm I guess, the creator and leader of the Driven Autism Dads movement. Um, I kind of want to tell you about kind of my story and how I got here, just to kind of introduce myself to you. So I'm about my kids are now my two sons on the autism spectrum are now 22 and 20. So I guess it would have been about 14 or I guess 15 or 16, 17 years ago, something like that. Um, we were awakened one morning by a blood curdling scream at like 6:30 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday morning. And my son, the older of my two sons on the autism spectrum, had already been diagnosed. And we thought we were excited when we finally got the diagnosis because now we thought maybe we could solve the problems we were having, but it didn't work out that way. The stress continued to ramp up and we were facing meltdown after meltdown. And, all the things you've probably faced: biting, hitting, screaming, kicking, all those things, defiance, all those things that come with a son that's severe on the autism spectrum. But this morning was kind of the granddaddy of them all. We were awakened at about 6:30 in the morning on Saturday by a blood curdling scream. And he was in full meltdown mode. And typically, meltdowns could last anywhere from 15 minutes to maybe an hour at most. This one was a 4-hour meltdown, and every time we would every time we get him kind of calmed down a little bit, he'd ramp back up for some reason, and it was just creating terrible consequences in our home. My wife was over the top frustrated. I was over the top frustrated. My two older sons at the time, who were about 9 and 7, were hiding in their room, afraid. He had smashed some glass out of a couple of windows in the house. And by the time we finally got him calmed down and kind of back to normal, and you know how that is, dads. I mean, he went from being frustrated and angry and crazy to just like nothing had happened. And my wife and I kind of turned on each other at that moment. And I think sometimes when the stress is that high, you tend to want to place blame. And in this case, my wife and I kind of turned on each other. And I remember, her saying, well, if you'd be more patient and, or if you wouldn't have done that or said that. And I fought back and said, if you would give him some discipline, maybe we wouldn't have these problems. And we kind of fought back and forth. And my wife was very patient, very feminine, never really fought very much with me, but at this point it was a knockdown, drag out fight. And I could tell that it wasn't going to stop. We were into it pretty heavily, screaming back and forth. And I remember I had my keys in my pocket and I thought, I've got to leave and just go out on the front porch and calm down because this isn't getting us anywhere. And so I went out on the front porch and had my keys in my pocket, and I was ready to just leave forever. I thought, this isn't what I signed up for. I was raging in my mind, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I knew my wife was kind of in the same situation. So I remember standing there with my keys in my pocket thinking, I'm going to leave and I'm not coming back. We're done. I'm done with it. I can't take it anymore. And right about that time, I remember an experience I had with my dad when I was about 12 years old. And I played a lot of baseball as a kid. And this experience, I was playing shortstop, and there was 2 outs in the last inning. And the ball was hit to me, and I made an error. And the next few guys got on base. And, as would happen, they ended up scoring and ended up beating us. And I remember after the game, I went over to my dad and I said, I wish the ball hadn't been hit to me, because then maybe we could have won. And my dad, lovingly but really firmly said to me, you know what, Kyle, that's not the way we do things. If you're going to go down, you go down with the biggest fight you can ever give. He said, you never give up. Don't you ever give up in something. If you're going to lose, then you go down with the biggest fight you can possibly go down with. You don't ever give up. The Jetsels don't give up. And this was my dad telling me as a 12-year-old. And I remember it stuck with me. And I used it throughout my life growing up. I remember playing other sports and being and losing and just fighting to win and just never giving in and never giving up. And at this point, it's exactly what I needed to hear. So I remember thinking, you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm not giving up. I'm not leaving. And so I did something else my dad had taught me as a kid. I went over and we were living in a little town called Red Oak, Texas at the time. And we had a giant pecan tree in our front yard, probably 100 yards away from the front of our house. So I went over under that pecan tree and I just kneeled and started praying. I didn't know what else to do, right? We had tried everything. We had tried ABA and we had tried different types of therapies and all kinds of stuff, and nothing was working. You're going to laugh when I say this, but we even got some of his poop, wrapped it up, and sent it over to France for a diagnosis. Remember, this was 17 years ago, and back then, people didn't know what they knew about autism like they do now. So we were struggling. We were at our wits' end, and our house was a stress-filled combat zone constantly. So as I remember praying to God, thinking, I don't know what else to do, right? I remember feeling in my heart at that time, God reach out to me and say, the problem is not your wife and the problem is not your kids. The problem is you. And I remember thinking, no, that ain't right. That's just not right. You don't understand. I remember thinking, you don't understand, God. I've tried everything. And I kept getting that same feeling. The problem is you, and you can fix this. And so I was out there for quite a while, and I wonder sometimes, I haven't ever asked my wife this, but I wonder if she actually saw me under that pecan tree kneeling, because I came inside and apologized to my wife because I'm sure I said some things that I shouldn't have said. And I said, you know what? I'm not leaving, and I'm going to fix our family. And her response was probably what you would expect it to be. She said, all right, well, we'll see about that. And I realized in that moment that she had lost faith in me. And I was no longer the husband she needed me to be, or the father my kids needed me to be. And that was the day I committed and decided, you know what? I'm not going to quit this until I figure something out, because I'm not leaving, and we're not going to live like this. We're not going to continue to live like this. So that's the day I became a Driven Autism Dad. And the good news is now it's, 17 years later, my oldest son I've got 5 sons now and 1 daughter. I have my 2 middle sons who are 20 and 22 are on the autism spectrum, but my 22-year-old, the older of my 2, is more severe. And so we now have what I would consider to be top 1% happy families and top 1%. I had a top 1% happy marriage until about a year ago when my wife passed away suddenly. But we have the kind of family that we wanted to create. And within about a year or so after I decided to become a driven autism dad, we had solved so many of the problems that we started to create the kind of family that we have now, which is a family that loves each other, top 1% happy families. And so I'm starting this, and just so you'll know, for the past 7 or 8 years, I've run a program called Thriving Chaos. And it was for a program where we taught parents, mostly it was moms, how to thrive in the chaos of raising kids on the spectrum, because that's what we had learned as a family. But when my wife passed away, I kind of shut that down, kind of had to take some time to myself. And I realized in doing that over the past year that I wasn't really serving the people that I connect with the most. And that's the dads, the driven autism dads of this world. Hold on one second. Hey, Eric, somebody's at the door. Sorry, it's Halloween and somebody's knocking on the door. I want my son to give him some candy. So anyway, I think that's how these videos are going to be, right? Get him some candy, buddy. Okay. So the reason I'm starting this Driven Autism Dads is because I'm going to rebuild the program that we use for families, and it's going to be for dads. I want to equip you with the tools and the training and the tricks that I've learned over the years that have allowed us to create the kind of family that I know that you want if you are a Driven Autism Dad. So I'll leave it at that for this video. Keep checking back in on the site periodically. I'm going to try to start doing videos real frequently. And I can't wait to see kind of what the response is. I'm ready to help. I'm ready to give back to the community and create a community of dads who are driven to give their kids the greatest lives they can give them, to give their wives and spouses, make sure they know how loved they are and make them feel that way, and to allow you as a dad and your whole family to achieve your full potential, whatever that may be. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'd invite you to join me. I talked to a guy today who's going to work with me on this thing. I'm really excited about what we're going to put together. So come back periodically and maybe do a quick video for me and maybe send me your story. I'd love to hear kind of where you're at. And I'll be covering a lot of things on these videos that are going to be real helpful for you. So come back and visit us soon. Again, my name is Kyle Jetzel, and I'm a Driven Autism Dad. You're going to see more of me, and I'm hoping you'll join me. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.